Hi, Fran. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be with you again today. And let me open my slideshow right away so that we can get started. Praise God. Slideshow. There we go. For the last two sessions, we've talked about my minimal encounters with anti-Semitism. And then we showed that anti-Semitism is really the foundational racism that there is. In this lesson, I'd like to talk with you about the new anti-Semitism, because there's something that's being birthed. There's a new kind of anti-Semitism, which is bigger and more virulent. And where is it coming from? And what does it look like? And how do we detect it? So that's what we'll be talking about today. And next time, we'll talk about the Judenschau, which I think will help us understand, at least get some insight into some of the frustrations in the social tensions and the racial tensions in America with regard to statues. And from a Jewish perspective, it'll give us some insight into what's going on in America. So with that in mind, by now, I think even from the last lesson, you can see that there are Jew haters on the right and on the left. This is an article from aish.com, a Jewish ministry out of Israel that is not Jesus following, just traditional Judaism. And on December 31st, 2019, they summarized where we are at with this article. Paragraph 2 says, in our hyper-polarized environment, many liberals choose to denounce Jew hatred only when it can be blamed on the right, while die-hard conservatives prefer to focus on anti-Semitic tropes that crop up on the left. Immediately after the Jersey City murders, Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib, she's one of the members of the Squad, you remember, in America now, she was quick to pin the bloodshed on, quote, white supremacy, obviously unaware that the killers were, in fact, followers of a militant black supremacist cult. She was real quiet about it when the truth came out, never said a word. It's on both sides, really evidenced by a recent scene when former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke, now this is as far right as you can possibly get on the political stream in America, David Duke, Ku Klux Klan leader, he clicked like on Representative Ilhan Omar's tweet. She's as far left as you can get in the political stream. She's in that same squad that Rashida Tlaib's in. So he clicked like on something that she had posted saying that the American support of Israel is, quote, all about the Benjamins, baby. So it's on both far right and on far left. Now, you may not know who Ilhan Omar is. She was voted 2019's Antisemite of the Year. And you can go to that, and there's even a video. If you'll go to that link on stopantisemitism.org, you can watch the video, and you can also go to that link and see that who they identify week after week for who are the anti-Semites of the week. But she got it for the year, and the poll shows that she's in first place and for the year, and the second place was Louis Farrakhan, the third place was Richard Spencer. So it's on both sides of the political world. Now, here is a video that actually just shows, actually it's a video that highlights all of the different things that she did over 2019 and why she would have been highlighted. And if you go there, you will see, for example, Mel Gibson will be identified for repeated offenses, and Ice Cube for his offenses. So far right, far left, both sides. They don't care about the political agenda. They're just focusing on one issue, anti-Semitism, and where it can be found. It's sad. Ilhan Omar is worth bringing up for another reason. There's something contemporary that I find interesting. She is the congresswoman for Minnesota's 5th district. Now, you might recognize that scene with the fire. That is the middle of Minneapolis when, following the horrific murder of George Floyd, the riots broke out. So this is the place where all of the current racial riots in America, this is kind of the birth spot for it. It was Minneapolis. Okay, and that's the place. Well, she's the congressperson for that space in the country. And the 9/11 Commission, following the 9/11 catastrophe, actually, if you go there and you do a word search in it, you will find that the word Minneapolis will occur 28 times there, because Minneapolis was the home base for the 9/11 terrorists. This is where they trained so that they could become pilots to do what they did to the World Trade Center. And I have long felt that it's no coincidence that they trained there. I pastored in Minnesota for over 20 years. In the center of your screen is a paper that was written by a fellow student of mine at the King's, Dr. Lonnie Bradshaw. And he wrote this paper it's called Minneapolis, the Anti-Semitic Capital of the United States. And it's a 19-page long doctoral paper establishing why he would call it and identify it as such. Well, this is the place where the 9/11 terrorists called home base. And this is the place where Ilhan Omar has risen to fame, and other significant anti-Semitic people in our country. And so this is really not a surprise. And what I'm saying is that anti-Semitism that has been going on in our country, 2018 was a record, 2019 was a bigger record. And then in 2020, we see this racial tension war hitting in America. And I'm going to, again, anti-Semitism is the foundational racism issue. We've got to deal with this issue within the church, especially if we're going to look at the way that the church, Jew and Gentile, are in our relationship are supposed to get along. Well, if we don't get that right, then how are we going to be able to use that as our foundation for how to deal with the black-white issue or the Hispanic issue? This is the foundational issue. We've got to deal with this issue. Well, friend, there's a new form of anti-Semitism. The rebirth of the nation of Israel has fostered the development of a deeper, more virulent kind of anti-Semitism. Have you ever heard anyone say, well, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Zionist? Well, not always, but many times that is really just another way for a person to say that they are anti-Semitic in a politically correct way in our country and in the world today. Here's an article out of Aish. Again, it's the Hebrew word for fire. Aish is they're in Israel, and they're not messianic. They're not followers of Jesus, as I am. They are traditional Judaism. The article is entitled "Fighting Anti-Semitism, Both Left and Right." And it's written by Natan Sharansky. Sharansky is a Russian-born politician in Israel. And the article begins, in response to defamation of Israel, Ron Dermer, Israel's ambassador to the United States, and I, he writes, formulated the 3D test to show how anti-Israel propaganda paralleled anti-Semitic propaganda against individual Jews. The 3D test is a formula to recognize the repetitive historical pattern of anti-Semitism, which is now aimed at Israel. It includes 3 criteria for detecting anti-Semitism in the form of anti-Zionism. And the 3 criteria that he names are demonization, delegitimization, and double standards. In other words, what he's saying is anti-Semitism has historically done these 3 things against individual Jews. And now what we're seeing is they're using the same 3 things to attack the nation of Israel. So that anti-Zionism is just now the politically correct way to be anti-Semitic. That doesn't mean that the country of Israel is perfect. No human being is perfect. Okay, but these same criteria, and you can identify anti-Zionism when it is, not always, but when it is anti-Semitic by looking for these 3 criteria. And so the article continues first with demonization. The article says examples of the 3 Ds abound. Anti-Israel protest signs depicting Jews with horns and tails, perpetuating the belief that Jews are demonic or satanic. And so you can see this cartoon, this comic, if you will. The Jewish person, looks like the devil. He's got a Nazi symbol on his left shoulder. He's got an Israeli flag on his right arm and an American flag on his left arm. And he's hovering over a globe, wanting to take over the whole planet, because you see, just like the individual Jew is demonic, the country of the Jews, Israel, is demonic. So these three standards. The article goes on to say, as it says, examples of the 3Ds abound: anti-Israel cartoons with classic anti-Semitic themes, such as the one of a dying Jesus represented as a Palestinian in his mother Mary's arms with the text, "Don't kill him twice." And as you look at that cartoon, what do you see? You see, obviously, Mary with Jesus lying on her lap, and you see the demonic Israeli soldier about to kill this Jesus, who is wearing a Palestinian scarf. So don't kill him twice. Just as you kill Jesus, now don't kill the Palestinians. And the switching, you see, is what's happening here. So the Palestinian terrorists are now the injured party, and the Israeli soldiers, they're not protecting Israel. They're now depicted as the murderous terrorists. And that's what we have here. The article goes on to say, depicting an Arab Palestinian as Jesus, at the same time delegitimizes Israel by distorting and manipulating Jewish history, reminiscent of the supersessionary Christian claim that Judaism was replaced by the New Testament. The reversal of historical victim roles, as in the Zionism is Nazism inversion claim. So now we have Palestinian terrorists are now the injured party, and Israeli soldiers, they're not protecting Israel. They are now depicted as the murderous terrorists. When in reality, if we just look at history for what it is, Israel was reformed as a country in 1948. 7 years before that, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem and Hitler met in November of 1941. Evidently, then, the existence of the state of Israel is not why they met. It was a mutual agreement that Jews are demonic. We're not going to fix this problem with a two-state solution. There was only one state in 1941, and there was no real hope of a state of Israel in 1941. So this is part of a long-time plot, frankly, to just kill Jews. So demonization and delegitimization, and then double standards. The third measure, double standards, are commonly reflected in UN resolutions, exclusively condemning or censuring Israel over the course of decades since the organization's inception, since the UN began. This singling out of the Jewish state has occurred while representatives of the world's most oppressive dictatorships sit on UN councils and committees that actually condemn Israel. Imagine Syria when there was on the Human Rights Council. Syria, killing 500,000 of their own people. They're on the council. They're condemning Israel. This double standard, the article says, is reminiscent of the 1,000+ discriminatory laws of Tsarist Russia against the Jews. So there's these double standards. So Natan Sharansky, the Russian-born Israeli politician, and Ron Dermer, Israel's ambassador to the U.S., said that these three past concepts of demonization, delegitimization, and double standards were anti-Semitic concepts that were used against Jews before as individuals, and now they are being used against the nation of Israel. Dr. Lois Alina identified these same three concepts as the foundation of what she calls the new anti-Semitism. So we now have this country of Israel. So that gives the ability for anti-Semites to focus their attention all the more. So anti-Semitism now is coming to a new height, to a new level. Let me encourage you, if you have not heard Pastor Robert Morris's sermon called The Last Week, he gave it on Palm Sunday, and he deals with anti-Semitism, and you could just click on the link, the picture, or on the link below the picture and hear him talk about it. And I'm very thankful for this sermon. If you want to learn more about this topic, Dr. Michael Brown wrote probably the most important book you could read on the topic. It's called Our Hands Are Stained with Blood. In 1992, he revised it in September of 2019. He is due to have a book come out in October of 2020 called Christian Anti-Semitism, Confronting the Lies in Today's Church. We'll talk more about this in the next week's lesson. There's a book called Theologians Under Hitler, and he deals with 3 significant theologians in Nazi Germany. The first section is on, surely this is the first section's an introductory section, but the first theologian he deals with is Gerhard Kittle. And here's what he writes about Kittle. In view of the incredible viciousness of his attacks on Judaism and the Jews, which have continued at least until 1943, Gerhard Kittle must bear the guilt of having contributed more, perhaps, than any other Christian theologian to the mass murder of millions of Jews by the Nazis. Now, who is this guy? Why is he so significant? Why should you and I care about him? You know, the French arrested him after World War II. He lost his key seat in the university in Tübingen, Germany, and he was put in prison for 17 months, and he was never restored. But why should you and I care if this guy was such an anti-Semite? Well, he wrote the 10-volume set called the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, 9,213 pages. It was abridged down to a 1-volume book, the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, 1,356 pages. This guy wrote the dictionary on how we should define the words that are in our New Testament. This is the standard that is used across the world on how to define the words out of the Greek. This is the standard, my friend. When I went for my MDiv, I can tell you that if I mentioned any other source when defining a word in the paper, I'd get a little comment. But what does the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament say? And it wouldn't matter how many other sources I said. If what they want to know is, did I look it up here? And that was a pro-Israel seminary. They didn't realize this about Kittle, though. Okay, and you know, do you think it makes a difference when an anti-Semite defines the words? It does make a difference. For example, what does the word when in the Great Commission in Matthew, and he says that he commissions the disciples to teach all the nations to obey all the commandments. What is the word nations? Well, guess what? It really means Gentiles. So it's a call upon the Jewish people to show the relevancy of Torah to them, which is exactly what the apostles did in Acts 15 at the First Council of Jerusalem. But the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament misses it by basically claiming that in that case, in that passage, the word doesn't mean the Gentiles. It really, in that case, means all peoples. And it removes the Jewish element from the Great Commission. So there are theologians today who will fully admit that Matthew is the gospel to the Jew, but they miss the point that the Great Commission of Matthew, if the book is to the Jew, the Great Commission is a Great Commission to the Jew, and that God has a Jewish function and purpose for the ongoing Jewish community. And it's found in the Gospel of Matthew. That's the Matthew's Great Commission. I wish I could spend more time on that with you. Here are 3 more good books. The first 2 are very scholarly. They're longer. The third book, Has the Church Replaced Israel, it's also scholarly, but and I used it in my doctorate, but it's far more readable than the other 2, perhaps because it's so much shorter. You could visit a number of Holocaust museums. Just Google Wikipedia's list of Holocaust museums. You could click on that link and go to it. You could visit the Dallas Holocaust Museum. That's new. It's very good. If you're in Israel, be sure and go to Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. If you go to Washington, D.C., be sure to go to their Holocaust Museum. There's one in New York City. If you go to Poland, there's where Auschwitz is. So I would encourage you to visit a Holocaust museum. You might take a bachelor's, master's, or doctorate level degree at the King's University. But even if you don't do the degree, you could take a course. There are three undergraduate courses in particular that you might consider: the Anti-Semitism and the Holocaust Studies and the New Anti-Semitism and Jewish-Christian Relations. You could stay in touch with the Ackerman Center. They regularly offer special events regarding Holocaust studies. And of course, you could also get a bachelor's, master's, or doctorate level degree in Holocaust studies at the Ackerman Center. You might like to read Anne Frank's book, The Diary of a Young Girl, 13-year-old girl who perished, was murdered in the Holocaust. And a lot of people don't realize that the 6 million Jews that were killed in World War II by the Nazis, 1.5 million of them were children. That was turned into a movie, as was The Hiding Place, a book about the life of Corrie ten Boom, and that also was turned into a movie in 1975. Here's a more current movie, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Here's a movie called Defiance, about a group of Jews who fought back. What makes this movie so interesting is that it's very unusual. There were very few Jews that actually fought back against the Nazis. Jewish people, when we look back upon the Holocaust, many of us will regret the fact that we did not fight back. We were like sheep going to, as sheep to the slaughter. And in fact, it's just part of our culture. We don't fight back. We don't riot in the streets. It's just how we are as a people. I have literally never hit another human being in my life, ever, except for my children when I spanked them. And so I'm not saying that it's right to riot in the streets, not at all. I'm just saying that that is because the Jewish people never did. Therefore, a lot of Jewish people have this sense of, because the grass is always greener on the other side, but we just don't do it. It's just not who we are. Here's a really good movie called God on Trial, about a group of Jews in Auschwitz in World War II that literally put God on trial. They have a mock trial. Did God violate the covenant? In this case, one of the men in the movie is actually portrays a man who was a judge in Germany, did not realize that he had any Jewish heritage until the day the Nazis came and arrested him, told him he has some Jewish heritage. He said, I don't have any Jewish heritage. Yes, you do. And they took him away, and the man ends up perishing in the concentration camps. And you know what? That was a very, very common story during the Holocaust. The idea that Jews just need to join the church world didn't work for thousands of Jews in Germany. I want to encourage you. Jews need to be told, no matter what, you stay a Jew. You honor your Jewish heritage. And the idea, during the Middle Ages, Jews were encouraged, if they wanted to become a Christian, they had to strip naked and whip themselves on the back as they walked through the street declaring a curse on Moses. No other group of people have ever been asked to commit cultural suicide if they want to come to faith in Yeshua. Friend, Jews need to be encouraged to stay Jewish and to honor their heritage and to love upon God through Jesus as Jews. Well, my friend, God told Abraham that he said, I will bless those who bless you, and I'll curse him who curses you, and in you will all the families of the earth be blessed. And with that in mind, I would like to close with the Aaronic blessing. Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav alecha v'chenecha, Yisar Adonai panav alecha v'yesem lecha shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In the name of the Prince of Peace. I look forward to being with you again.